There is a peculiar tendency of the human mind that causes an enormous amount of unnecessary suffering, and it is this: the mind has a remarkable capacity to create problems where none actually exist. It conjures difficulties, manufactures crises, invents catastrophes, all in the realm of imagination, all in the domain of thought, all completely divorced from what is actually happening in the present moment. And yet these imaginary problems feel entirely real. They create genuine anxiety, genuine stress, genuine emotional turmoil. You lie awake at night worrying about them. You feel the physical symptoms of fear in your body. You make decisions based on them. All of this in response to problems that do not actually exist outside the confines of your own thinking. The question naturally arises, why? Why does the mind do this? What possible purpose could be served by creating problems that are not real? And more importantly, how does one recognize when the mind is doing this, and what can be done about it? Let me begin by describing what I mean more precisely. I am not speaking of legitimate concerns, genuine difficulties that require attention and action. If you have no money and cannot pay for food or shelter, this is a real problem. If you are ill and need medical attention, this is a real problem. If there is a genuine threat to your safety or well-being in the immediate present, this is a real problem requiring a real response. But examine your own experience honestly, and you will find that the vast majority of what occupies your mind, the vast majority of what you worry about, the vast majority of what creates anxiety and stress, these are not real problems in the sense I have just described. They are problems that exist only in thought, only in imagination, only in the mental projections of possible futures or interpretations of past events. You worry, what if I fail at this task? But you have not failed. You are imagining failure, projecting it into the future, and then responding emotionally to this imagined scenario as though it were real. You worry, what if they think badly of me because of what I said? But you do not know what they think. You are imagining their judgment, constructing their negative opinion in your own mind, and then suffering from this construction of your own making. You worry, what if this pain I am feeling is a sign of serious illness? But you have no evidence of serious illness. You are taking a sensation, adding interpretation, adding fear-based speculation, and creating in your mind an entire medical catastrophe that may have no basis whatsoever in reality. Do you see the pattern? The mind takes something, a future possibility, an ambiguous situation, a physical sensation, a memory, an uncertainty, and it elaborates upon it. It adds layers of interpretation, speculation, catastrophic thinking, worst-case scenarios. It creates stories, narratives, complex scenarios of disaster. And then it presents all of this to you as though it were real, as though these elaborations were facts, as though these imagined futures were actual present circumstances requiring your immediate anxious attention. Why does it do this? Several reasons, I believe, all of which reveal something important about the nature of mind and how it functions. First, the mind is a problem-solving instrument. This is its primary function, its evolutionary purpose. The mind evolved to identify threats, anticipate dangers, plan for contingencies, solve problems. And it is very good at this. This capacity has allowed human beings to survive and thrive in a challenging world. But here is the difficulty. The mind does not simply wait for actual problems to arise and then solve them. The mind is constantly scanning, constantly anticipating, constantly imagining what could go wrong. This was useful when our ancestors faced immediate physical threats, predators, hostile tribes, harsh environmental conditions. The mind that could anticipate danger and prepare for it had survival value. But in the modern context, where immediate physical threats are rare for most people, this same mechanism continues to operate. The mind continues to scan for problems, continues to imagine dangers, continues to prepare for disasters. But now, lacking actual immediate threats, it creates problems. It manufactures things to worry about. Because this is what it does. This is its function. A mind with nothing to solve, nothing to worry about, nothing to anticipate, Such a mind feels purposeless, feels as though it is not doing its job. So it creates problems to solve. It invents worries to attend to. It generates anxiety about imagined futures, because this gives it something to do, something to work on, something to justify its constant activity. Second, the mind creates problems as a way of maintaining the sense of a separate self. The self, the I, the ego, the sense of being a distinct entity separate from the world, this is largely a mental construction, and it requires constant maintenance, constant reinforcement. One of the primary ways the self is maintained is through problems. When you have a problem, you have a self that has the problem. When you are worried about something, there is a you who is worried. When you are trying to figure something out, there is a you who is trying to figure it out. Problems, in other words, confirm the existence of the self. They give the self something to do, something to be concerned with, something to organize itself around. A self without problems might begin to dissolve, might lose its sense of distinctness and separateness. And the mind, committed as it is to maintaining the self-structure, will create problems if necessary to keep the self feeling real, feeling solid, feeling like a distinct entity with concerns and worries and challenges. Third, the mind creates problems as a way of avoiding the present moment. The present moment, when you actually look at it, when you actually feel into it directly without the overlay of thought, is quite simple. You are here. You are breathing. Sensations are arising. Sounds are happening. This is what is actually occurring, and often, in the actual present moment, there is no problem. The problem exists in thought about the future. What if this happens? Or in thought about the past. Why did that happen? Or in thought about what something means, what it implies, what it might lead to. But the actual present moment itself, stripped of all this mental elaboration, is frequently quite manageable, quite bearable, quite peaceful even. And this is threatening to the mind, threatening to the self-structure that depends on constant mental activity for its existence. So the mind generates problems to keep you from resting in the present moment, to keep you engaged with thought, to keep you from discovering that in this actual moment, right now, there is often nothing wrong. Now, let me be more specific about the mechanisms by which the mind creates these problems. There are several common patterns, and recognizing these patterns is the first step toward freeing yourself from this unnecessary suffering. One common pattern is catastrophic thinking. The mind takes a situation and immediately jumps to the worst possible outcome. You feel a pain in your chest, and instantly the mind is constructing scenarios of heart disease, heart attack, imminent death. You make a mistake at work, and the mind immediately imagines you being fired, being unable to find other work, losing your home, ending up destitute. These catastrophic scenarios feel real when you are caught in them. They create genuine fear, but they are entirely constructed. They are stories the mind is telling, not descriptions of what is actually happening. Another pattern is mind reading. You imagine that you know what others are thinking, and typically you imagine that they are thinking negatively about you. Someone does not smile at you, and you immediately construct the thought, they are angry with me, they do not like me, I have offended them somehow. But you do not actually know what they are thinking. Perhaps they are preoccupied with their own concerns. Perhaps they did not even notice you. Perhaps they smiled and you did not see it. But the mind constructs their judgment, makes it real in your imagination, and then you suffer from this construction. Another pattern is creating false dilemmas. The mind presents you with two options, both of them negative, and insists that these are the only possibilities. Either I do this thing I do not want to do, or terrible consequences will follow. Either I please this person, or they will reject me. Either I succeed at this, or I am a failure as a person. But life is rarely actually structured in these binary, all or nothing terms. These are constructions of the mind, ways of simplifying complexity that actually create false problems by eliminating all the other possibilities that exist. Another pattern is fortune telling. The mind claims to know the future, and typically it predicts negative outcomes. This will never work. I will fail. They will reject me. Things will go badly. But the mind does not actually know the future. The future has not happened. These predictions are just thoughts, just mental activity, just imagination. But when believed, they create real anxiety, real stress, real emotional suffering in response to something that has not occurred and may never occur. Another pattern is should thinking. The mind creates an ideal of how things should be, how you should be, how others should be, how life should be. And then it measures reality against this ideal and finds it lacking. I should be more successful by now. They should treat me better. Life should be easier. This should not be happening. And this gap between the ideal and the actual creates suffering, creates a sense of something being wrong, creates a problem. But the problem is not in reality. The problem is in the comparison between reality and the mental ideal. Reality simply is as it is. The problem is created by insisting it should be otherwise. Do you recognize these patterns in your own thinking? Can you see how the mind takes situations that might be ambiguous, uncertain, or even neutral, and transforms them into problems through these mechanisms? This recognition is crucial, because as long as you believe that these mind-created problems are real, as long as you take them as accurate descriptions of reality rather than as constructions of thought, you will continue to suffer unnecessarily. So what is to be done? How does one work with this tendency of the mind to create problems? The first step, as I have said, is recognition. You must learn to recognize when the mind is doing this. You must develop the capacity to observe your own thinking and to distinguish between what is actually happening and what the mind is adding to what is happening. This requires a kind of meta-awareness, an ability to step back from thought and see it as thought rather than as reality. When you notice anxiety arising, when you notice worry, when you notice stress, pause. Ask yourself, what is actually happening right now? Not what might happen, not what happened before, not what this might mean, but what is actually occurring in this present moment. Very often, you will find that in the actual present moment, there is no problem. The problem exists entirely in thought about the moment. The second step is to question your thoughts. When the mind presents you with a catastrophic scenario, ask, is this actually happening, or is this something I am imagining? When the mind tells you what someone else is thinking, ask, do I actually know this, or am I assuming? When the mind presents you with a should statement, ask, says who? Where does this rule come from? Is it actually true, or is it just a belief, just a mental ideal? This questioning does not mean you ignore legitimate concerns or fail to plan for the future or refuse to learn from the past. It means you distinguish between useful thinking, thinking that is genuinely helpful, that leads to constructive action, that addresses actual circumstances, and useless thinking, thinking that simply creates suffering without serving any useful purpose. The third step is to bring yourself back to the present moment. The present moment is the only place where reality actually exists. The past is memory, the future is imagination. Only now is real. And when you are fully present, fully here, fully attending to what is actually happening rather than to what you are thinking about what is happening, the mind-created problems often dissolve. Because they were never real to begin with. They were only real in thought. This does not mean that challenges disappear. This does not mean that life becomes problem-free. Real difficulties will still arise. But you will find that there are far fewer actual problems than the mind would have you believe. Most of what you worry about, most of what creates anxiety, most of what disturbs your peace, these are mental constructions, not actual circumstances. And here is something profound that you may discover. When you stop creating problems with your mind, when you stop adding layers of interpretation and catastrophic thinking and judgment to what is actually happening, life becomes remarkably more manageable. Not easier necessarily, but simpler, clearer, more direct. You respond to what is actually here rather than to what you imagine might be here. You deal with actual circumstances rather than with feared scenarios. And this requires far less energy, creates far less suffering, and is far more effective. There is also this to consider: when the mind is not constantly creating problems, when it is not endlessly churning with worry and anxiety and catastrophic thinking, something else becomes available. There is space, there is stillness, there is a kind of peace that is not dependent on circumstances being a particular way. This peace is always here, always available, but it is obscured by the constant mental activity, by the endless problem creation, by the mind's insistence that something is wrong, that something needs to be fixed, that something requires your anxious attention. When you see through the mind-created problems, when you recognize them as constructions rather than as reality, you can rest. Not in the sense of doing nothing, but in the sense of being at peace with what is. And from this peace, from this restfulness, you can respond to life more appropriately, more wisely, more effectively than you ever could, from the state of chronic anxiety created by believing in problems that do not exist. Let me give you a simple practice that can help with this. When you notice yourself worrying, when you notice anxiety arising, stop and write down or simply speak aloud to yourself the exact nature of the problem. Be very specific. Not "I am worried about work," but exactly what you are worried about. Often you will find that you cannot actually specify the problem clearly. It is a vague sense of something being wrong, a general anxiety, but when pressed for details, it becomes unclear. This itself is a sign that the problem is mind-created rather than real. If you can specify the problem, then ask, is this happening right now, or is this something I fear might happen? If it is not happening now, it is not a current problem. It is an imagined future problem. And imagined future problems are not real problems. They are thoughts about possible problems. Then ask, if this were actually happening right now, what would I do? Very often you will find that you already know what you would do. The anxiety is not actually about lacking a solution. The anxiety is about the possibility of the problem arising. But if you already know what you would do if it arose, then there is no need for anxiety. You can let the future be the future and deal with it if and when it actually arrives. And finally, ask, in this actual moment, right now, what is required of me? Usually, the answer is something quite simple. Breathe, be present, continue with the task at hand, take the next obvious step. The mind-created problem creates a sense of overwhelm, a sense that something enormous and complex needs to be addressed. But in the actual present moment, what is required is almost always quite simple and manageable. The mind creates problems that do not exist, because this is what minds do when left to their own devices. But you are not merely your mind, you are the awareness in which the mind operates. And from this awareness, from this perspective, you can see the mind's activity for what it is. You can recognize problem creation as it happens. You can distinguish between real and imagined difficulties. And you can choose not to believe every problem the mind presents to you. This is liberation. Not liberation from all difficulty. Life will continue to present actual challenges. But liberation from the endless self-created suffering, the constant anxiety about things that are not actually happening, the chronic stress of living in a mind-constructed world of problems rather than in the actual world as it is. The actual world, when you look at it directly, is far simpler than the mind makes it. This moment is what it is. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant, sometimes neutral, but always just this. Just here, just now. And in this direct experience of what actually is, there is a peace that the problem-creating mind can never find, because that peace exists prior to problems, beneath problems, in the space where problems cannot actually reach. This is what you discover when you stop believing in the problems your mind creates. Not that life becomes perfect, but that you are already at peace, have always been at peace, and the only thing disturbing that peace was the belief in problems that were never real to begin with. Thank you.